Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Maximizing Savings with Integrated Management Systems. Your presenter today is Chad Keimel. Chad Keimel is the CTO and founder of Omnex, a global consulting and training organization. He has developed and delivered lead auditor courses that integrate ISO 9001, ISO 14001, and ISO 45001 standards into a unified audit process. Chad also founded AQSR, a global registrar specializing in integrated audits, and has authored 5 books and over 100 papers on integrated management systems and quality management. His career includes leadership roles at General Motors and KPMG, service on the Malcolm Baldrige Board of Examiners, and recognition with multiple quality awards, including ASQ's Quality Professional of the Year. If you have questions during the webinar, please type them in the chat box and we will address as many as we can at the end of the webinar. Now, please join me in welcoming Chad.
Hey, Kelsey, thank you very much. Folks, thank you for joining this webinar. As many of you probably know, integrated management systems is very near and dear to me. I have done probably 50, maybe to 70 papers, presentations, and I wrote a book on it. So join me. While we focus on QMS, EMS, OSHAs, also, in this presentation, the methodology I talk about could be used very much to integrate IT security and social responsibility. And I'll tell you why as we go through the presentation. For those of you who may be new to Omnex, we are an organization that's 39 years old. We do many things, other than QMS, EMS, OHS. Today we're doing a lot of cybersecurity implementations with TISAX. And of course, we have a very strong Lean Six Sigma practice, which is very needed today. So we're headquartered in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we have 16 offices worldwide. Okay, I will go past my bio there and focus now on the subject at hand, which is about an integrated management system. Let me start out by saying what is the fundamental rationale of an IMS, and then we'll spend time on the fundamentals. And then the key to integration is a process approach. We'll talk about that. I'll finish by talking about best in class and the return on investment of a IMS. One thing I did want to mention, so let me just go back there. Today, we are looking to save money. So let me keep your interest by telling you there's $730,000 of savings in each site. So when we get to section 5, I will ask for your input, whether the costs that we have estimated to be in a medium-sized company is similar, higher, or lower in yours. So what is the rationale for the IMS? It is really today the Annex SL, as we call it, for the high-level structure, what is talked about today, which helps us easily understand integrated management systems, proliferation of standard, increased costs of implementation, and the challenge for the enterprise. So these are the drivers then of the integrated management system that brings you all is that you are dealing with many, many, many different standards. On top of that, in your organization, maybe different people are handling different standards. And let me just say this, integrated management systems can be implemented and still the leadership role for an environmental standard or an environmental health and safety standard versus the QMS can be separate, but the systems can be integrated. So I would imagine when I first presented this, maybe in 2016 or 2018, of course, I started in 2006 writing my first paper. So I've been presenting it much more. But what I was saying is, you all are used to seeing this outline now. It's nothing new. But what you don't know probably is you're probably seeing this from a QMS perspective, or you're seeing this from an environmental ISO 14001 perspective. Suffice to say, the same structure, the same definitions hold for all these different standards. By the way, there is a new 9001, new 14001, new 45001 coming. We will do a webinar to tell you what is a timing, what are some of the key changes that are coming with these standards in another webinar a little bit later. All right. So the point of this is that the outline or structure is the same between all these different standards, even the new standards, and that there's a proliferation of standards. I mean, depending on which company you are, you have a QMS, IATF, or AS9100 or 13485 QMS standard. Many organizations today are implementing 14001. Many of you are trying to implement 45001 or have implemented 45001. But most importantly today, if you haven't, you should be looking at 27001. That's the information security management systems and various types of sustainability standards. And of course, if you don't try to, again, our top management will hand off 27001 to a different organizational chimney and sustainability to a different organizational chimney. It still all can be integrated and it saves money. Why do we have this proliferation of standards? Growing expectations globally are, driving, customers wanting, us to be, of course, top management wants to make sure we don't get hacked. Customers want us to be sustainable. Customers want quality. Customers want us to be environmentally responsible. That's so what we're saying is there's a proliferation of standards. There is a growing expectation from our interested parties. And third is, many of you in the audience today have, companies. We drew a very large company here, but maybe you have something, a little bit less than that. And can you imagine a $730,000 savings in one plant? And you can just multiply it in the plants, design centers, sales offices. And I easily think, $40, $50 million for a medium-sized company to $500 million for a very large company. We're dealing with some very large companies at Omnex, and you can just imagine how much savings there are. Okay, so that was the first point of this webinar, was to say what is driving integrated management systems is, number one, the standards have similar outlines. 2, proliferation of standards. 3, customer expectations. And then we have a very large, diversified company, all following different standards, causing so much confusion to our customers, so much confusion internally if we have not standardized. That is the motivation that brings us to the second chapter of what are the fundamentals. So this is something I've not seen. I published my book, I think a couple of years ago. I have not seen anybody adopting this definition, and it's really, really important that everybody sees what an integrated management system is. In short, it's integrated processes, risks, and audits. And then very importantly, I'll distinguish between integration versus standardization. Okay, so here it is. IMS stands on 3 different pillars. Integrated processes, integrated risk, integrated audits. A lot of times, companies who come to us immediately want to jump to integrated audits, and we have to tell them, look, you cannot do an integrated audit unless you do integrated processes. All right? So let's just take a look at this. And I made a definition because every time I ask a company, they say, we're integrated. And you know what? They're not integrated. They don't even know how to measure what they're integrated. So, sorry if I don't mean to sound combative here, but bring us in. We'll do a good count for you in terms of whether you're integrated or not, and we'll do a gap analysis to tell you what you need to do. But I do consider you integrated for processes if 70 to 95% of your procedures/processes are integrated, and at least 30% of your work instructions. All right? And, at least 50%, I didn't put it down in here, it's harder, of your forms and checklists need to be integrated. For a process or a work instruction to be considered fully integrated, it should be managed by one process owner. Why do we make this request? Because that's where the savings are coming from also, okay? The process should be managed by one process owner, meaning one change management process, one training process, one management review process. And the caveat that all processes do not have to be integrated, all right? All right, some people, I'm an aficionado of IMSs, and I see many IMSs that are done either by us or by somebody else. I know a company that slavishly tried to integrate everything. Don't be the Taurus that came up with the oval shape and they designed everything oval. No, everything does not have to be integrated. It's not optimum to integrate everything. Second big point, and I'm not going to dwell here because if you go back into our past, we have done whole webinars on integrated risk. Let me suffice to say, you can have one integrated risk process. We think it's very important to have one integrated, I did this for sustainability based on ISO 26000 actually. And, use the idea of and standardize how you rate the severity, occurrence, and detection. All right. Risk is always, either, the effect, you may call it by different ways. It's the severity of the effect or they call it the impact. Okay. All that it means the same thing. You cannot change the definition of risk. It's the occurrence times impact, okay? All right. And then, of course, the control comes into place and residual risk comes in after you put in your controls. All right. What about integrated audits? Use of one common audit process and an audit program for managing QEHS, okay? Sometimes we just say QEHS, okay? For the quality, environmental health and safety. Today, we say IS and sustainability, okay? Management system. To have one management system, one system of audits, and it can use either integrated audit or you can have an audit team that uses different types of audit checklists, but really, when you're auditing training process, you only need to audit it once. That's where the savings comes in. When you're in when you are in the training competency, you just need to audit it once if it's being integrated. Management review once. You get the idea. That's where the savings come in from. So what then are the benefits of integration? All of this, I'll say focus, efficiency, effectiveness, okay? Efficiency because you're reducing processes, process owners. Integration because the whole company is looking at one set of goals, process goals, okay? And effectiveness because it has one risk tool, one proven process. Really though, the big benefit is savings. Today, in the end of the day, savings are all what it is about. All right. That takes us then into a second discussion of standalone processes. Does this make sense? Folks, if you're not following me, feel free to put in your questions, okay? And I am seeing right now no questions. Can I usually tell where the questions are? Okay. All right. I don't see it in this one here, but if you have questions on what I've said so far, ask me questions. So this is a standalone system where the documentation for 45001 is different from the documentation for EMS, different for your QMS, maybe IATF 16949, maybe AS 9100, or it might be the ISMS, all standalone. So what we're talking about is integrating it into, it doesn't have to be one manual. This is the easily done document. So, but really what's important is integrated processes. What did I say is okay? 70 to 95%. 30%, I'm going very low. Let's say I said 50%, but I'm willing to accept, but you got to show integration if you want to say you are an IMS. All right, let's continue. Integration versus standardization. This is a very important concept, that integration means integrating one standard, but the enterprise, each plant, warehouse, all of them could have different documentation. That's lack of standardization. Lack of integration horizontally, lack of standardization vertically. So what do we need? We need both standardization and we need integration, okay? Which then really helps you with the most amount of savings. So integration refers to standalone systems. So you will have in one plant, you'll have a QMS documentation, document management, documented information. 14,001 documented information, 45,000. A different one, training one for 27,000. Different training process for 45,000, 14,001. Or 9,001. All right. So, duplication of processes this way. And then when we say standardization, is that same document management process is a unique one here, unique one here. All of them are following different processes. All right. So, what is the goal? The goal is standardization and integration. Of course, this is the ideal state, is to have this, okay? So I just have you think about where the savings is coming from. If you have in an enterprise 4 sites with 3 management systems, and so really if you have 4 sites with 3 management systems, it's 12 management systems, 4 times 3, okay? Versus 1 integrated management systems. So think about if there are 500 documents in one system, that's an average. Okay, this is all the work instructions, all the processes, all the forms. You can imagine there's 6,000 documents in 12 management systems. So if you integrate it, what do you get? Well, this just says 501 management systems, 6,012 management systems. And also, if there are 100 process owners in one system, it equates to 1,200 process owners in the 12 different, not sites, 12 different management systems. All right. So the savings comes in when you are able to reduce the documentation, 500, and reduce the process owners. So you have only, again, really, today I would say you can only implement this well if you use electronic flow. All right. You need to have software processes that help you manage it across the board. All right, we will move on then, and I think I'm doing okay on time. So I'll just pause here to allow you to write some questions if you have any questions, okay? What kind of questions come to your mind? I might, even if I have time, I might just even answer the questions you have right now, okay? What questions come to your mind? Okay. What we'll move on to is the next step here is the 3.0. The integration focuses and hinges on a process map, process flow, and, of course, the process map is the sequence and interaction of all the processes in the organization. The flow chart is about the documenting the standardized process, and then metrics, standardizing metrics across the organization. Can you imagine the savings we'll get when we accomplish that? Let me just go right in. So here is the process map. And what we're talking about, this is the way my organization works. It doesn't work differently just because I'm putting IT security in. I may have some additional processes, but fundamentally, I do new product development and manufacturing in this flow. I do, purchasing in one way. I manage suppliers one way. So what we'll have to do, so we say when encountering a shall from any management system, meaning 27001, what is it? Just new shalls. The processes of the existing organization either meets it, needs to be updated, or you need a new process. So 27001 will require many new processes added in. Also, it will need these processes in here for product realization to change. It will change the way we do management systems. Your management review, your business planning. All right. So the key to integration then is the process approach or the process map. So process maps then document the processes in enterprise. It provides a uniform way for the processes to operate company-wide, enterprise-wide. It allows linkages of key measurables and process measurables. I know you don't know what that means because it's a methodology we practice here called BOS, Business Operating System. It represents a uniform look and feel for the organization and to its customers and suppliers. So let's talk about that, and I'll introduce the BOS when we talk about the best-in-class integrated management system. So what then is a best-in-class IMS? How do we do enterprise performance measurement? Third, we'll take you to the idea that electronic workflows are critical to the IMS. So these are the topics I'll be introduced, and you can see some of the learning objectives we have for this chapter on the best-in-class integrated management systems. All right. So here are the 4 factors of a best-in-class system. You have to do both integration and standardization. You got to do integrated risk. So the risk then from the Q and the risk from environmental and the risk from health and safety can be equated. Right now, everybody is doing a different risk process, and you really cannot quantify the risk or add up the risk for the enterprise. This is not a good condition to be in, and this has to really improve. Hang on one second here. All right, so integration and integrated risk, and I lost my flow there for a second. So the idea of integrated risk, so you perform risk whether it's Q, E, HS, or anywhere in the site, it's done uniformly. And guess what if we use AI to help us with that? Okay. And then, of course, integrated audits. Everybody wants to do integrated audits. You can do it if you do an integrated and standardized management system. All right. So then integration and standardization of Q, E, HS, and today, of course, IT security and social responsibility. Then implementation of KPIs and process measurables. So the processes and the process map need to be measured. So what we'll have to make sure, what the boss does is it takes the company's objectives and makes sure the KPIs are measuring the objectives and that the objectives are all focused on the interested party expectations and the context of the organization. Does that sound familiar, folks? From ISO 9001 or IATF or AS 9100 or environmental context and interested party expectations. And the objectives are then derived for it from the strategy of the organization, and then the KPIs align with it. And then the processes then are supporting these KPIs, and there are process measurables that help us meet the objectives. All right. I'm getting a little bit into the QoS, BOS process. And then integrated management system software. And I'll introduce 4 different important platforms from Omnex. Do you remember this? I just covered this. What does this slide show? It shows the integration and standardization. All right. So what is this? What is this? Integration or standardization? Integration. What is this? Standardization. Okay. All right. Again, I am not saying it's magical. It's going to take time, especially if we have one of our customers, I think, has 562 sites, is the largest IMS we're going to be taking a part in. And it has to be carefully architected how that is going to get done. The next part of this is enterprise performance measurement. So, I helped Ford Motor Company write a methodology called QoS, and we spent so much time defining what a key measurable is. But the key, whether you call it a key measurable, key metric, or KPI, they all refer to the vital few measurables that measure the pulse of the organization. And top management should focus on these 12 to 16 metrics. Folks, not 50, not 90, not 120. Top management needs to have a focus. All right. And this measurables are customer or interested party expectations focused because it comes from our idea of what interested parties want. The needs and expectations of interested parties are considered when you formulate these measurables. Folks, you can't measure Q, E, HS in detail at the top of the company, but it should have a representative one. But it can be measured by the different organizations that manage Q, E, HS, or IT. All right. They could have, 5 to 10 to 12 metrics that they're looking at, but top management should only get 1 to 2 from that area. The key measurables measure what's important to the customer. All right. Come up with standards for how to run business reviews, visual management, linking improvement. So the whole idea of this, of the performance management is why we called it. It's about improvement. So I have often found at the very top of the company, they're good at looking at metrics, but they don't know they are the drivers of those metrics, or they don't know how to do improvement. So they need coaching on how to do improvement. So does some of our other areas of the business need to know that should be a goal line and then the as is, and there's a gap. And how do you close the gap? By improvement teams, all right? Improvement teams close the gap between where we are and where we want to be. All right, so these reviews are done on the key measurables. And of course, you have to make sure it also satisfies the shalls of the management review. So something very important, and I'll show it in the next slide, these process measurables drive the results. Folks, these are all the very esoteric, important, great truths of running a business, is that you don't improve a KPI by staring at the KPI. You identify the drivers, which are the processes. Processes you can improve, results are results, okay? So this process KPI, there's improvement actions and improvement teams working on this process, the process KPI that improves this process that drives this result, okay? Typically, there is not just one key process. There might be 2 to 3 key processes that drive one KPI. Identifying this alignment chart is key to the performance of the metric. Do you need this to be integrated management systems? No. You need it if you want to have a best-in-class integrated management system. I'm not even going to go here. This, as you can see, is important to me. I wrote papers on it. The idea of net zero and net positive, the coming up with zeros for the sustainability, okay? Zero energy, zero carbon, zero water, zero waste. And as I said, when I do dive deep into it, you know, there was a time in the 80s, they did not believe that you could have zero defects and that you could drive it. Of course, we don't have zero defects, but we are now, some organizations are on parts per million. Okay. Sorry, parts per billion, not ppm, parts per billion. So with that, if the organization sets these goals, we can accomplish it. So this is a picture here. I can tell you the story of process measurables like this. Here's the goal of 100% on-time delivery, all right? And we're measuring it on percent on time. You know, I spent so much time on this in one part of my life that I could tell you all about how you should quantify a measurable, all right? So this percent on time, you cannot improve. Why? It's a result. What can you improve? You identify then that the drivers in this organization, it'll be different, is maintenance. If we don't have good maintenance, our on-time delivery is no good. We don't have good scheduling. Manufacturing needs to be operating at optimum, and shipping needs to do that job. When all of these 4 processes perform, you can get 100% on time. So the idea is measuring these key processes with these process measurables, and the focus of improvement then are on these quantifiers, process measurables that will help you get the percent on time up to meet this objective, which meets this customer expectation. All right, so you're understanding it, okay? Next, I think many of you who attend probably know what a control plan is, okay? But Omnex says there's a business control plan that ensures all these process measurables are being managed and controlled in different meetings. Why? The success of the organization depends on these process measurables performing. So it's not just not enough to measure the objectives or the results. You got to measure the processes, all right, and keep them under control. I'll pause here to see if you have any questions for me that I can answer so far. We're still doing good on time. I was a little bit afraid when I put these slides in place that I'm going to run over. Okay. So what appears? What are your challenges? What are the questions that you don't understand? So what I'll do now is talk about the integrated management systems functionality. And really you need integrated. Let's see here. Let me go here, right here. Okay. So these are integrated document control, audits, training and competency, integrated. Well, let's go on. This is the functionality, folks. And this is the new product development functionality. And this is the supply chain functionality that we need. And out of this, really, so this is what drove Omnex to create the new product development platform, the supply management platform, and the integrated management systems platform. This is for companies who are moving towards electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles. They have to deal with functional safety, ASPICE, and product cybersecurity. It's a version of NPD for electric vehicles. So this is something imperative and important for all of you to implement as a part of getting to integrated management systems. All right. What then are the savings in an IMS? Is this shocking? $730,000. And I'm going to walk you through these savings. And I'm interested in getting your response to whether you think, whether you want to challenge the way I have come up with these savings. I'm not going to talk about the 50% or the 66% or the 20% here. Let's do it here. So there are two costs in implementation. One is when you do it the first time, and one when there's a new release. So there's a new release of standards coming in, ISO 9001, 14001, 45001. And the first time implementation cost we said for QMS is 80,000, 40,000, and 40,000. We try to be conservative to say, there's a total of 160,000. So what do you save? You save, when you integrate this, you will save 50% of this cost can be done if you have the plan for integrated management systems right up front. And also the same when you do an upgrade. An upgrade of a system which is integrated is far less. And we said, there's a 50,000, and I have to say, whether we touch or breathe and change things very slightly, the costs are, so this is all the costs of maybe, not even maybe hiring a consultant, okay? Just getting training, excuse me. And then having different teams, standalone teams, updating the QMS, doing the audit for the QMS, implementing the QMS, doing corrective action, and standalone for the EMS, QMS, EMS, okay? So savings for the first time, we said, and then these upgrades happen every 5 years. Okay, sometimes it's 7 years. We took it as 5 years here, and the savings is $55,000 or $11,000. A net present value calculation will net present value it to 110,000. All right. So 110,000 plus 80,000. Now, most of you may not be starting at the very beginning, so maybe all you'll get is 110,000. Okay. The idea that updating an integrated standard is much less expensive than when they had to do standalone QMS, EMS, OHS. I would like to see your comments on this first set of did I go too low? Am I just right? Am I too high? Let's go on to the next one. Maintenance. This is the greatest savings, is that every year, you have to audit your system. Process owners have to ensure the system is working. They have to measure the process measurables. So if you do as a standalone, we said QMS is 40, EMS is 20, OHS is 20,000. Remember, with the integrated management system and then standardization company-wide, we said there's a saving of 66% when you integrate all three to about 52,800. And a net present value of it, approximately, we came up with, it's more than this, but we just, approximated it to $500,000. Okay. So maintenance savings then is $500,000. And then you have the third-party auditing costs of about $29,000. And a 3-year contract, usually it's doubles because you have to do surveillance and then you have to do a 80% upgrade in the third year. So it's about $60,000 for 3 years. And so the savings is per year cost. First of all, we divided it by 3, about 20,000, savings of 20%. There's larger savings, but we want to be conservative here, of $4,000 on a per year cost, a net present value of 40,000. Okay. So when you add up the savings of 190,000, 500,000, and $40,000, it's a $730,000 savings. Folks, this is why the idea, so maybe it's 500,000. I'm not going to quibble, but I've given you a way to calculate what your savings are going to be. And then you multiply times the number of sites you have. And I have to tell you this, the savings after implementing the very first one are much more in the second site, third site, fourth site. The implementation costs go down to almost zero if you're going to standardize. So you just have to make sure the processes are rolled out and you have to do an internal audit. All right. But that cost is much, much, much lower for the second site, third site, fourth site. Okay. So really, what the summary, what I have as a takeaway is that, number one, the definition of an integrated management system is integrated processes, integrated risks, integrated audits. Integration is focused on, bringing together the 3 different standards or 4 or 5 different standards if you do IT security, which I think is important. And then, of course, standardization is important to flow out standardized processes globally. And then we said best-in-class IMS implementations have integrated and standardized management systems, integrated risks, integrated audits, integration and standardization of multiple different standards, performance, implementation of KPIs, and integration, implementation of the BOSS that aligns KPIs, objectives, context, and interested party expectations, and then software to help you manage this integrated management system. All right. With that, I want to remind you, we have courses in, of course, they couldn't put all the IATF, AS9100 medical device courses here, but we have a number of different courses looking at risk, integrated management systems, and there's a whole combination of integrated management systems you can do. Folks, integrate, it saves money. Here are the IATF courses. All right. So with that, what I'll do now, we have a few questions. Let me also just give you time to write a few more if you have a few more questions. And then we will get started here in answering them. Okay. All right. So let me take a look at the questions that have come up. So I see this coming from one of our attendees as maybe more a comment. I'm not seeing a question here, but let me read this, okay? IMS for manual procedures is followed by a number of organizations. I am not sure. I am not seeing a lot of procedures. I do see manuals. I don't know how many procedures are being standardized. KPIs are different for each standard. Yes, true enough. Been driven in cases the organization having messed up in the integrated audits. Okay, all right. So this attendee thinks there is integration. I didn't see any integration of work instructions or forms and checklists. KPIs can be integrated, not integrated, but standardized, okay? And some thought put into how do we define KPIs at the very top that represent all the different standards. I have many, many thoughts that I can't just blurt out here. And then measuring also, making sure it's 12 to 16 at the very top, and then designing carefully the silos. What are they measuring? And then ensuring there's good improvement taking place to drive this overall performance management. Okay, that's the very first one. Second question, how challenging is it to have single process owner from a different plant location that probably doesn't know very well the other sites? Okay, so the idea for this is you got to, first of all, have electronic workflow. So you have to have software, and the software is actually, so there's a whole flow of actually how the audits are working, a problem solving is working. It's visual to everyone, and the process measurable is also visual to everyone. So that process owner needs to really look and then focus on the organizations that are not, maybe the lead time has gone up, or because we're going to set, deadlines by which customer corrective action needs to be answered, ADs need to be answered, and so on. All right. So maybe it doesn't go from 50 to 1, but that one process owner can maybe have a meeting with a number of other representatives of a few locations. But the cost can go down significantly. But good point. We have, again, a comment, I feel, this for this attendee. I don't know if he's still here in the conference. We have followed for certification audits, separate team members for QMS. You can have it for certification audits. Part of the problem, I ran a registrar. I don't know if you knew. And we sold that registrar, so we have a new registrar now focused on sustainability and functional safety in ASPICE, okay? But the old registrar that we sold had a team of 20 people that could do QMS, EMS, OHS. Of course, taking it from Omnex, the registrar, we preached IMS, and so a lot of IMS people came to us. The problem with IMS today is registrars are struggling for auditors who understand all three standards, okay? That's the biggest problem. But I don't really understand what this appreciated approach is. The certification audit itself needs to have the certification audit needs to be integrated, okay? You need to have somebody, otherwise, what is the idea of integrated audits? Let's say you have done the training process in this site, for, once for QMS. It's the same process for EMS, same process for OHS. I'm looking at the management review. There's one management review. Oh, it's actually a business review, okay? Because we're doing it for performance. You don't have to do it 3 times. It's been done. So that's where the EMS, the integrated approach saves time for an audit. You're sampling once, and with that sampling, you are already seeing if it's good or bad. All right. Now, I ate many, many schemes, like what I mean by schemes is aerospace or automotive, do not allow sampling of sites. All right. So you have to assess, you have to check every process in every site. Now you don't have to do it for surveillance, but you have to do it in the first time. All right. All right. So again, we're getting a comment. I do appreciate it. Our experience for the last 26 years is that of certification audits, organization must do separate internal audit for each standard. Soon as you say that, I'm afraid to tell you that you're not integrated, okay? You have separate processes in each of your QEHS, all right? One more thing, I hope our instructors are teaching it. I do say when you sample a process to take Q, E, and HS samples, okay? So that in that integrated management systems, no person can come back and say, you know, your environmental training process was really bad. That can happen if you have a different process owner for E than Q, right? That's why it should be the same process owner. So when you know Q is working, you know E and HS is working. But I always say sample all three. Does that make sense? None of the organizations want the IATF certification audit along with EHS and energy audits. Okay. I'll have to say, you know, again, so I'm getting a lot of commentary. You know, that could be true. Okay. I appreciate. I've got a lot of questions from one person. Folks, where are some of your other questions? So this, again, a little bit of commentary that certifications are being forced on by the customer. What can be done to improve this process? I think at the end of the day is we just have to have very solid, internal processes, and if you are really good, I have seen companies go and talk to their customers and talk about reducing the number of audits. I saw a lot more talk about it years ago. I'm seeing less talk about that now. So that's my suggestion. If you have a very solid process, maybe if you have it even electronically controlled, I do believe we haven't got that far yet, but very soon, maybe what we'll do, we're doing this for ASPICE, but we can do this for Q also, QMS, EHS. We can say whether it's being followed or not, whether the process is good or not, so that I don't think it really needs to be physically sampled because we can sample it with AI. Okay, I think that is all the questions I have for today. And I hope you enjoyed this webinar. We do webinars time to time. As you can see, I really enjoy doing webinars. I hope you enjoyed this one yourself, and hope to talk to you all again soon. So thank you for attending this webinar, and take care, everyone. Bye-bye now.